Brexit. British clubs could suffer in the transfer window, warns sports expert. We're going to go back to the 24th of June 2016 and then come forward a little. British football clubs could find it more difficult to buy summer targets after the UK's decision to leave the European Union, an expert has warned. Transfer fees and wages may rise, said Simon Chadwick, Professor of Sports Enterprise at Salford University. Clubs could suddenly find players are much more expensive because the pound is worth less, he told BBC Sport. Football Association Chairman Greg Dyke said the decision could have quite an impact on English football. He said the full impact of leaving the EU might not be known for 2 years. It would be a shame if some of the great European players can't come here, but I don't think that will happen. Whether the total number reduces will depend on terms of the exit, said Dyke. My personal view is that has been that the decline in the number of English players in the Premier League first teams, we're down to about 30% now, is a shame. If it increases the number of English players, that is to be welcomed, but you don't want to lose the best European players coming here. The decision could give homegrown youngsters a better chance of breaking into first teams of top clubs, said Gordon Taylor, the chief executive of the PFA, Professional Footballers Association. These youngsters are not always having a chance. They're connected to clubs from the age of 8 and then joining at 16, and some 500 out of 600 are out of the game by the time they are 21, said Taylor. Players' wages, staging of big events and the Premier League brand could all be affected by Brexit, according to Simon Chadwick. Our sport for several decades has been underpinned by European Union legislation, and we're going to have to think about new rules and new ways of doing things for a period of uncertainty and I think incredible instability, and that could last anything up to 5, possibly 10 years, he said. The most immediate impact in the short term will be upon this transfer window. What we've seen over the last few hours is pound plummeting at that time in value by as much as 10% at certain stages. Players could be more reluctant to move to clubs in the UK if the value of their potential salaries has fallen, said Chadwick. However, the Premier League said it would continue to be a hugely successful sporting competition that has strong domestic and global appeal regardless of the referendum result. Given the uncertain nature of what the political and regulatory landscape might be following the Leave vote, there is little point in second guessing the implications until there is greater clarity, a spokesman said. Clearly, we will continue to work with government and other bodies whatever the outcome of any process. Now, in terms of work permits, some Leave campaigners argued that a post-Brexit UK could lower freedom of movement restrictions on the rest of the world. Analysis carried out by the BBC in March of squads in the first 2 tiers in England and the Scottish Premiership revealed 332 players would fail to meet the current standards, as we mentioned also back a couple of months ago as well. Scottish club Hamilton Academical admitted it may have to change its recruitment policy, with manager Martin Canning indicating 7 or 8 of his squad could be affected. However, the rules could be watered down to make it easier for non-EU players who come to the UK, as is the case with Norway and Switzerland. The BBC did earlier in the year identify players like N'Golo Kante at Leicester who would currently fail work permit regulations, said Chadwick. There will need to be a process of negotiation, and this may take a year, 2 years, who knows, before we get a system of how we will deal with overseas players. The summer of transfer activity that we are used to, the kind of rumours of big signings, we should expect a period of restrained activity until the players, agents, their clubs, the Premier League and everyone involved in football is sure about what's going to happen. Taylor said the work permit process was evolving and that the domestic game will continue to be attractive to overseas players. The feeling is that football is above such matters and will cope with it. Football is not just about Europe. The European Federation is of massive influence, but football is a world game. It is a global game and we are a global village, he said. Now, as mentioned, outgoing FA chairman Craig Dyke believes Brexit could lead to more opportunities for English players to feature regularly in the Premier League. At the time, on Friday 24th of June 2016 is when this story is from, but the country voted on Thursday 23rd of June 2016 to leave the European Union in a referendum, thanks to a 52 to 48% majority, despite London, Scotland and Northern Ireland backing the Remain campaign. The decision could have a substantial impact on English football, as we've said, with attracting foreign players key to the Premier League's commercial and global success. Now, of course, we have gone into the details of mentioning the current work permit situation at this moment, but basically the current system requires non-EU players to have featured in a certain percentage of their national team's games, but use of a similar criteria for EU players would have seen many current Premier League players denied a work permit. Now, it is one of them ones where in terms of increasing the amount of English players. Of course, Greg Dyke is welcoming that, but he doesn't want to lose the best European players coming here as well. And as mentioned earlier, Roy Hodgson had a limited pool of players to choose from in regards to national selection. 3 lines were at the time at Euro 2016, but it was one of them ones. But it's one of them ones where Harry Kane was adamant at the time that he and his teammates did not let the result of the referendum distract them. Now, it is one of them ones. I said the Premier League believes English top flight will continue to be as successful in the future as it is now as well. And also, Premier League clubs will protect EU players after Brexit vote, vows PFA chief Gordon Taylor. From Saturday 25th June 2016, Premier League clubs will still be able to sign the best foreign players despite the result of the European Union referendum and the impending Brexit at that time, PFA Association Gordon Taylor said on Friday. Now, Taylor has moved to assuage fears that the recruitment of Premier League sides will be restricted in light of the referendum results, or that European players in England will be forced to leave. He said there is no reason why we still can't recruit the best quality foreign players if they want to come here, Taylor told Reuters. It doesn't mean any players have to go back. We will protect our members whether they are from Europe or the rest of the world. 432 players from EU countries were registered to play in the 20-team Premier League last season, according to Sky Sports. We are proud of our leagues, which are the most cosmopolitan in the world, said Gordon Taylor. We have provided more players to internationals, to World Cups and the Euros than any other country. I think we have our members in all the remaining teams in France, and we are proud of that, but we have to bear in mind what has happened and how it impacts on the game. So it is one of them ones. Very, very interesting in terms of what's happened with this referendum. Gezzie Fizzle, I'd like to get your view on what I've just read out.
Well, I think it's very interesting because there's a lot that we won't know in terms of effects, not just in football, but politically, socially, economically as well. In regards to the EU referendum and the result of the EU referendum for quite some time. And then, of course, the other side of it is just looking at it politically, socially, and economically. There are people that are actively protesting, literally, against the result of the referendum anyway. So what happens as a result of that as well also remains to be seen. But taking it back to football, I think transfer fees and the potential of players moving to the league, with the economy being affected by it, does play a major part. Right? I direct people to a book called 4 Hour Work Week by somebody who I'd like to have at my fantasy dinner table for my fantasy dinner party. Tim Ferriss, right, where he talks about working less hours in a different country to earn more money than somebody who works a 9-to-5 job, right? So if you can come to the Premier League for 1 or 2 seasons and make more money than you did somewhere else, and still keep your cost of living relatively low, then you're going to make a lot of money. And if the value of the pound has gone down, obviously you'd make less money. And I think that's why one of the reasons you see so many players moving to China at the moment, right? Because they're going to get paid more money, literally. And that is the attractive option. And I don't blame these players for wanting to go to play in China. Now, is it as illustrious or prestigious as playing in Europe? No. But will it set them up when their family and probably their friends up and the whole communities that they came from up for the foreseeable future? Absolutely. Absolutely. So if a player is looking for prestige, yeah, come play in England for a season. If you're looking for money, go and play in China. That's what I would have to give as official financial advice. In terms of transfer fees, yeah, transfer fees are going up, but we've seen that year on year anyway. Right? It seems like, 30 million is the new average for, anyone in the age bracket of say 20 to 25. And if you're not paying that, you're not paying a average transfer fee at the moment. Will those prices go up further? Probably. I mean, at the end of the day, there's talk of Paul Pogba going for close to £100 million.
Yeah, I'm hearing that rumor. I mean, right? If Man United do that, that's
I put it to you like this, right? Yeah, we can go and set prices on things, but generally speaking, what the cost of something is what you're willing to pay for it. That's what the cost of something is. So if you think that this particular thing, whether it's actual physical possession or the services of a particular person, if you think it's worth what you think it's worth and you're willing to pay that, then that's what it costs you. And it's that simple. Now, in terms of what you make back on that investment, that remains to be seen. But that's what the costs are going to be. And, we've already seen that, some of the footballers that are regarded as the very best in the world, they command those ridiculous figures. And they will only go higher. They will only go higher. What I'm personally waiting to see is that €100 million bracket be exceeded.
Well, do you think that the Premier League will be able to keep its global appeal even with this kind of red tape, as I'm going to say it, even with this red tape of leaving the EU, the decision in the referendum, and that kind of thing? Do you think the Premier League? Do you think the Premier League's above all of this, and it's still going to continue on in the same way?
I think it again, the whole impact of that remains to be seen. It's very, very difficult to say right now, definitively. It's going to lose out compared to this, or it's going to lose out compared to that, right? Because I think it's all to do with marketing at the moment, right? So I'd say to you that the Premier League is one of the best marketed leagues in the world. Now the playing field's kind of evening out when you look at, the quality of managers that are in the Premier League at the moment. Or coming to the Premier League and about to embark on their first campaigns in the Premier League, so on and so forth. You look at, say, for example, the Bundesliga, you say, that's not really as competitive as it was many years ago, so that's not really an interesting watch. The same could probably be said about Serie A, right? In La Liga, it's a two-horse race generally. Eredivisie is not overly competitive apart from 1 to 3 teams, depending, or even 4 at a stretch. So again, I don't think that's particularly marketed very well in terms of competition. I think currently the only league that would really go and challenge the Premier League in terms of marketability with big stars and everything else would be the Chinese Super League. Just because of who they have playing there. But again, it comes down to marketability and then, of course, the prestige of the league. Or you say, well, the Chinese Super League, no. Right?
There's no prestige at all.
There's no long-standing history. There's no big fairy tale about it. It's something very, very new, and it's going to take some time. But in time, with a history of having, some of the best players in the world playing in the league, yeah, it could rival the Premier League very easily. Now, as I say, one of the interesting potential upsides for all this is the amount of English players in the Premier League. But do I think that, the Brexit has a big impact on that? Personally, no, I don't. Here's the thing about academy players for me in a nutshell, and young English players at that, right? If they're good enough, they will play. Right? And I present to you the class of 92, and more recently, the likes of a Harry Kane and the Marcus Rashford as proof in terms of at the very top level. If you're good enough, you'll play. That's it. If you're not good enough, you won't make it. So it's a matter of the people down at the academies and the players themselves really going and applying themselves to make the players that are in the academy that are English and so on and so forth really make the most out of themselves. Because at the end of the day, when you look at these players with their careers, which fizzle out at ages 20 to 20, I think it was 20 to 24, I think it was something like that. Look, it's down to those players. Either they applied themselves and they got to where they needed to get to through hard work, dedication, and everything else, or they didn't. And that's it. The opportunity is going to be exactly the same. Now, the reason why the English talent seem to be overlooked per se is, one, because the quality isn't there, and number two, you can go and buy quality from somewhere else. Are you really trying to tell me that if there was a English equivalent, and I say English specifically, to the likes of a Paul Pogba, to the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, even a Gareth Bale, even though he's Welsh, right? If there was an English equivalent to all of those, are you really trying to tell me that he wouldn't get played? I don't believe that. I don't believe that. So what's going to be interesting for me is what happens with the academies and the focus of the academies after that. But if they want to go and implement, was it the 5+6 or 7+4, whatever kind of restriction that they wanted to put in it to help assist that along, I'd say, yeah, go and put that in and see if it makes a difference. But as of right now, it's a matter of, if the quality's there, they will play. It's as simple as that.
Do you know what, for me, this do you know, I'm going to latch onto that point first. I actually did mention in my blog at pitchtalk.blogspot.co.uk, was it England Euro 2016 elimination and a 25-year problem, my latest blog entry. And the 6+5 all in theory is good, but in practice, yeah, there'll always be a way out. There will always be some sort of chicanery pulled so that clubs don't have to adhere to it. Now, the reason why I mentioned that first specifically is the fact that I don't think this whole Brexit thing is going to allow more English talent through into Premier League clubs. Don't think it is, because for the pure example, you look at Portugal. Where did they get most of their players from? Portugal and Spain especially. Where did they get most of their players from?
Well, South America.
There we go. So basically, considering the Premier League is about money and is about getting the best quality for the lowest price, which does not count for English players, obviously, it's one of them ones. The Premier League will start, I think the Premier League will end up looking at more South American talent. Because especially when you've got players, look at the impact guys like Luis Suarez came over and made. I mean, yeah, he wasn't bought directly from a South American side, but he's a South American player. Sergio Aguero, Mascherano, Tevez. Look at the impact them guys have made. Imagine that increasing tenfold. That's one of the things I think Brexit will open the doors for. Because it's one of them ones, all right, it's potentially going to cost us a hell of a lot more to buy from Europe. We'll go to South America, where the game hasn't changed there. In terms of us voting out, that doesn't change anything down there. Now where? Now there. So it might just be a shift of focus and a shift of where the Premier League sides get players from. But it doesn't guarantee, it far from guarantees more English talent getting opportunities, in my opinion. So I mean, the Premier League is rather amoral on a general basis anyway. So it's I think that's where it's going. That's where it's going to go. I mean, the Premier League clubs vowing to protect EU players. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that because of the money involved. Because imagine it's one of them ones. The Premier League clubs, actually, I think it was all 20 clubs were actually in favour of Remain. So the vote, so it's one of them ones. The vote wasn't cast by them clubs. Those clubs were in favour of it. So it's one of them ones. Imagine you're a Premier League club, you voted to remain, and the rest of the country or large parts of the country vote out, and then you start losing your best players because of the new stipulations. in theory, that would open up so many lawsuits because so many clubs would end up losing money because of it. So it's one of them ones I think deals have already been struck. Just like I said, opening this up to wider society, even though I voted in a certain way, and I don't need to shout from the hills which way I voted because it's actually irrelevant for this reason. Those who needed to protect themselves, I said, even though I did vote, those who needed to protect themselves, the cynic in me always said, you know what, no matter what happens, those who need to protect themselves, and those especially big businesses, and I would count the Premier League as a big business, had already made their deals months ago, because you don't get to be a big business by leaving this kind of thing to chance and potentially missing out on millions of pounds. You know, if you're a big business and you're a constantly evolving and thriving big business, you can't leave this kind of crap to chance. And any smart businessman won't leave that kind of stuff to chance. They'll make deals. So the Premier League, I think the global appeal, yeah, it will still be there. And I'm very much of a kind of a similar opinion with where was it there was one thing said in particular. I actually want to find the exact quote where it was that kind of football is kind of above that kind of thing. I think it's one of them ones. I mean, because the Premier League is such a strong brand, I think, as you said, Jazzy, it's one of them ones, the prestige and notoriety of playing in the Premier League, managing in the Premier League, it will always happen. Like, the best will always want to come here at some point in their career. Whether they do or not is a different story. But it is one of them, was a Premier League spokesperson saying the Premier League is a hugely successful sporting competition that has strong domestic and global appeal. This will continue to be the case regardless of the referendum result. It is one of them ones. I can, yeah. I mean, football has always been one of them ones where it's been very much exception to the rule. It actually has been very much exception to the rule on a general basis. And as I said, I personally do very much think that football is one of them ones where it's like it's an exception to the rule in these kind of things. Look at how many clubs, you look at how clubs are run and how many millions of debt they can be running. You can see that from a business perspective, football clubs are exceptions to the rules. So I think this whole Brexit thing will be no different. Just purely on the basis that, yeah, football and politics don't mix, and they don't mix well generally. But it's one of them ones. I don't think football will be affected that much in this country. I mean, players' wages, they're astronomical anyway. As you said, Gezzie Fizzle, it's a case of they are astronomical anyway. So that won't change. So it's one of them ones. The fact of the matter is, for me, that won't change. These wages are going up stupidly anyway. I mean, look at Ibrahimovic. He's just come breezed in for 250 grand a week. So it's like, that's not going to change. And the fact that it was mentioned, oh yeah, there might be like a period of kind of holding back in terms of transfers. Well, Liverpool have bought Sadio Mane for 34 mil. Ibrahimovic has come in on a 1-year deal for high wages. Townsend, Mandanda, them kind of things are happening. Man City have signed Nolito from Celta Vigo, so there were still deals going on from the continent. Batshuayi as well from Marseille. Who else? It's one of them ones. Leicester have signed Mendy from Nice. So some of these deals are interleague deals, which are quite high priced, but also there's been deals between Ligue 1 and the La Liga and the Premier League still. So I don't think the Premier League clubs are really quaking in their boots about this whole Brexit thing, because as I said, football is very much in its own bubble generally. So considering it's very much in its own bubble generally, I think it's definitely a case. I think it's definitely a case of. I think that the Premier League is going to survive as a cash cow no matter what, and especially after that £5.136 billion bloody TV deal. That's how you know it's a strong worldwide brand. And as said, that deal was done last year. So like I was saying earlier, it's one of them deals have already been done to protect. Protectionism has already gone on. So it is one of them ones. I mean, of course, there's a lot of economic uncertainty generally, but I think the footballing world generally tends to ignore that anyway. Potentially, I think it'll be to its cost in the long term, but I think what also helps as well is that the country in general doesn't really know what's going to go on. Britain as a country doesn't know what's going to go on, and to coin a phrase that I heard on, I think it was July 9th 2001, and Gezzie Fizzle and Brad Hicks, you might remember this, from right at the beginning of the invasion angle in the WWF, Paul Heyman, when ECW and WCW came together, it was the match actually was Lance Storm and Mike Awesome against Chris Jericho and Kane on Raw is War, and it was one of them ones. Paul Heyman actually said a line that stuck with me since then: where there is chaos, there is opportunity. Where there is chaos, there is opportunity. And I think it's one of them ones where, with this chaos of no one really knowing what's going on with Brexit, I think the Premier League is just going to see this as an opportunity to look at the way they do things and think, you know what? Instead of going to Europe to do our deals and paying inflated prices, we'll go to South America. We'll go to Asia. We'll go to other places and make our deals. Certain clubs have already been trying to tap in. Certain clubs for a number of years have been trying to tap into the Asian market, especially. You look at Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal with their Malaysia tours over the past few years. Those clubs have already been tapping into that area anyway. So if you're tapping into them for money, why not tap them up for talent too? There was also the premiere of the ad hoc films movie, Sleeping Giant, an Indian football story, where QPR took two youngsters from India and brought them over, and brought them over to give them a contract to play over here. So trying to hit into that market, there's billions of people in that market. So I just think it's one of them ones where the Premier League as a business is smart enough to see when something potentially detrimental is coming, and to change what they're doing to acclimatize and accommodate for it, and still make money and come out smelling like roses. Because I said, where there is chaos, there's opportunity. I mean, Gezzie, I don't know if you agree with that, but it's the way I'm looking at it.
No, always. Since the beginning of time, that's how it's been. There's another phrase that goes into antiquity that, rings true even now. Fortune favors the brave. Right? Another way of saying that, he who dares wins. Right? So again, it's kind of like with this now, yes, there's a huge opportunity. And with how the Premier League itself, if you really want to look at this and analyze this in a slightly different way, with how the Premier League itself is going to react it, I says to you that honestly, the Premier League is unaffected.
Gezzie, you still there? It's one of them ones. I think it's interesting that, yeah, I just think it's one of them ones where the Premier League as a business entity, as a cash cow, and certain big businesses will always find a way of protecting themselves, no matter what. I mean, I don't know if that's where you were going, Jesse, but
well, as I was saying, you know, I think that the league itself, as you said, is shown itself to be a separate entity from, for the lack of a better term, everyday people. Yeah, they're not governed by the same rules. They're not one and the same. They're not a reflection of society. So in that lack of reflection, it goes and it says, well, right, look, we're going to continue as we are. And in all actuality, and this is the really interesting thing about this whole Brexit thing, is that nothing on a practical level has actually changed yet. Nothing. Right? Until I think it's like Article 50 or something like that.
Oh yeah, the re-referendum thing, yeah.
The Lisbon Treaty, right? Until all of that paperwork is pushed through, nothing is actually different. Everything that we talk about in regards to the Brexit and the effects of that, until Article whatever it is, the Lisbon Treaty, until that paperwork is filled out, everything else is pomp and circumstance. That's it. Once that is filled out, right, then it actually means, yeah, the government is committed. Until then, it's like, yes, there was a vote that says that the people of the country have said, yeah, they want to come out, right? But until that paperwork is filed, all that it means is there was a vote, and that's what the people said. That's it. In terms of everything practical, nothing has changed. And I think that's the thing that's being reflected by the Premier League right now. Premier League right now, they said, look, we are leaders in football, in the sense of we spend large sums of money, we bring some of the best players in the world to the league, we showcase those players in the league, and that's what the league has continued to do.
No, definitely.
So it's very much business as usual.
Yeah. And I said financially, if for nothing else, football is one of those anomalies. It just does seem to be one of those anomalies that, especially, I mean, look at corruption more than anything. I mean, it mirrors society. I mean, football's my traditional microcosm of society, and it mirrors society in a number of ways. But yeah, I mean, corruption. I mean, well, football is essentially similar to kind of the banking sector, where everything around it can crumble, but they'll still be all right. It's just very odd like that. And I said, I don't think it's one of them ones where Brexit is going to have any sweeping effect on the game, because I said there are too many people who have got too much money tied up in it to let that happen. I think that's where I'm coming from on that. I mean, if you got people signing £5.136 billion TV deals, you think they're gonna potentially like let something go through that could lose them a third of it, a quarter of it, half of it? No, not going to. I think deals have been done, and I think it was Gordon Taylor saying, yeah, we'll work with the government. It's like, yeah, we'll have work permit procedure in place. They're talking about 2 years. Was it? Of course, it's not happening overnight. We will look after all our EU members, and it's going to be a system of development. They're talking about 2 years. We have the work permit procedure in place, which we agree with the Home Office, the governing body, the FA, and the Football League. So it's a case of, obviously they're going to be working very closely with the government, but considering football's the national game, they're not going to let it happen. And this Premier League spokesman saying we will continue to work with the government and other bodies, whatever the outcome of any process. And also, given the uncertain nature of what political and regulatory landscape might be following the Leave vote, I think deals are being made as we speak, if not made from months ago, just to say, right, football's ring fenced. Don't worry about it. You're fine. No, there's always a loophole.